Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here for the Service Provider Portal webinar. This is the second webinar. If you missed the first one, you can find that on circularactionalliance.org and click on the webinar archive and you'll be able to find it there. As always, the legal disclaimer here, we are not your attorney. We are not your legal representation. Do not take it as such. Anything that you hear in this is not intended to be legal advice, and please don't use it that way. Today, we are going to be talking about the service provider portal that CAA will be operating or setting up. So we'll do an overview of that, look at the timeline, talk about some activity reporting, invoicing, reimbursement, preparing baseline data, what the next steps are, and hopefully have some time at the end for questions. As a reminder of who CAA is before we get started, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that was founded by the member companies that you see here on the screen. We implement EPR laws across the country for paper and packaging, and we are just weeks away from launching the first packaging EPR program here in Oregon. So thank you to everybody for your time and energy working with us, getting all of the things turned in and signed. We really appreciate your support to do that. Our mission at CAA is to help producers comply with EPR laws in the states that we operate in. We make sure that there is harmonized EPR implementation so that folks around the country comply with the laws as they are required. Here in Oregon, we are also working with all of our local government and service provider partners to make sure that you have the funding and resources needed to roll out our law here, the Recycling Modernization Act. CAA has several portals, and so just giving you a high-level overview of these before we get started. Today, we will be talking about the Service Provider Portal there at the top. This is used by any service provider, such as a local government, hauler, commingled recycling processing facility, the CRPFs, or others to submit reports, request reimbursement, and several other tasks, which we'll go through today. Producers are not going to be using this portal. The other portal, the next portal that we have is the Education and Outreach portal. This portal is used by local governments and service providers to access and edit educational materials. They can download those, send them to us for printing, and that is used by, again, local governments, service providers, anyone that's providing the education to their community. Producers, CRPFs, and others won't be using that portal. And lastly, we have the producer portal. This is used by producers or those brands that are covered under EPR laws to register and report with CAA. Local governments and service providers don't use that portal. So these are the three portals that we have. And today we'll focus on that top one, the service provider portal. And I will turn it over to the amazing Aaron Berman on the CAA team to walk you through how this works.
Great. Thanks, Alex. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Aaron Berman. I lead the data analytics team at the national for the national CAA organization. So we do work across the different states, but we are 100% focused right now on launching this program right here in Oregon. So the service provider portal, I know that you probably maybe heard a little bit about it, but basically this is the portal where all of the service providers, and so service providers again are local governments, haulers, facility operators, and those are the main ones, and local governments. So those basically we need to, as an organization, we have quite a few requirements from DEQ for things that we need to be able to provide them in terms of reporting and verification and tracking. And so we in turn are asking all of the service providers who we are, either who we are working with throughout the state to support us in those efforts. And so some of the things that we need to be able to do, and this portal will be able to do for you, is this is where we'll be getting data, tracking material from communities all the way to the responsible end markets. So it's a critical part of the RMA, and so that's something that a lot of the conversation today will talk about. Some of that sort of material tracking. But also for haulers, this is where you'll request, approval for transportation reimbursement. And we'll kind of go into that in some detail. And then obviously, probably most importantly, this is where you'll be able to submit invoices with required documentation, so for all of for any kind of reimbursement. And so all of the service providers who will be getting reimbursements will need to submit invoices. And then you'll also be able to check the statuses of them. Finally, be able to submit questions and requests to CAA staff through the portal. And we'll get it just like any other kind of ticketing system so that we can then get it to the right person within our organization. Next slide, Alex. All right, so we have just internally have been wrapping up testing the last few days, and so the portal is going to go live next week on the 17th. And so that's when, for those of you who have signed the PFA and filled out the funding application, we'll be able to start to enter you into the system, and you can start to receive. You'll receive a sort of the primary contact for the organization. We'll receive some information about the portal, links to training, and then we'll get the billing contact. We'll get set up, and then any other, if you do have to submit activity reports, and I'll talk about those in a little more detail. But if you do need to, we can give access to each of those different people as well. And so I think a lot of this is in that funding application. And we'll be able to obviously, not everyone needs to be set up day one, but we can certainly kind of work with each of you to do that. For the larger organizations that are going to sort of be operating in multiple like lots of jurisdictions, or if you kind of have various divisions or different reporting entities within your organization, before we start to set up the individual users, we'll probably set up one account with the primary contact to get some information. But we'll want to make sure we understand exactly how each organization is going to be submitting data and then invoicing. And we can probably set it up. We can customize the way that we set these up so that it makes sense within each organization. Obviously, within limits, the system will be able to sort of set up individual accounts so that we make sure that the right folks within your organization have the right levels of access. And so we'll start doing some of that next week for those who have signed the primary funding agreement. And then the following week, we'll be at the AOR conference. If you happen to be there, we can give in-person support. We'll also have some of the folks on my team available virtually that week as well. So if you're not at the AOR conference, or if there's not enough open spots to connect with one of us in person, we'll also have the ability to have folks connect virtually with some of the folks to get set up or to answer questions. So there will be some ability to work with us to submit test data. I know that some folks we've already been working with, and we've been using our sort of our test environments to do that. And so we look forward to kind of continuing to work with as many folks as possible prior to July 1st to test this. If you have questions sort of specifically about the service provider, be it getting access, or you have questions about it, you can email this serviceproviders.support@circularaction.org. And then once you're in the system, you can obviously, it's probably easier to submit a question or request through the portal itself. Next slide. All right, so this simple diagram is how you get is kind of how we're going to be provisioning the access. Obviously, this starts immediately with signing the PFA or PFAs for each of the organizations. And then once you've kind of filled out that funding application, then we can start to set up the account information for you within our system. And the main things, there's kind of going to be two sort of layers of security. So there's obviously the most secure portion of the website is going to be the where you can submit invoices and check the status. There's also where you enter your banking information of how you would like to get paid. We'll be doing most of our payments, or as many, we want to do all of our payments, as many as possible, through ACH, so sort of direct deposit into an account. So, so that kind of, so we want to make sure we know the billing contact when you fill out your funding application, and that one will be critical to get set up. And then once you get that email, then you'll have the billing contact. And I think all of these emails, this is something we haven't been able to change within the system. It sort of comes baked in, is that you only have 24 hours to, to click on the link and start to set up the account. So we'll want to coordinate with everybody, make sure that they're ready to receive the email, they know it's coming, so that they can then, click on the link and get the rest of your account set up. So then for folks who are going to be submitting activity reports, and so these are all material movement. So whether this is glass collection, transportation reimbursement, if you operate one of the CRPFs or a transfer station, all of these will give folks access to submit these activity reports. And so this could be one or multiple folks within your organization that would be, able to submit these activity reports. These are all, like, the activity reports are really important for any sort of material movement. Obviously for us to help track this material to responsible end markets, but then also for each of the organizations. This is the data that you submit is also the data that will be used to validate the invoices. And so we'll really want to make sure that that information is, is accurate, and we'll be going through a whole approval process, reviewing and approving that data as it gets put into the system. Next slide. So the kind of the two main functions within the portal are going to be activity reporting. And as I've talked about, so submitting the activity reports, we'll have an automated validation logic that will, to automatically look to make sure the format is correct, and that all of the data that's in there sort of matches what we're expecting for that type of activity report. And then we'll also have a manual review of that as well, at least at the start, so that we can get to know everybody's data and we know sort of how the data is coming in, and as we continue to kind of validate our validation system. Throughout, you'll also be able to kind of review the status of the activity report, so you can see if yesterday's or last week's activity reports have been approved, or if they're still, pending, or if for any reason they've been rejected. And so usually they may be rejected for not having a facility that we recognize, it may just be a data entry error, or it might be that there's a new end market that you're trying to send material to, or there's a new transportation segment that you'd like to send your material that's not in the system. Those are some of the reasons that the data could get rejected. And then we would work with you individually to review and update, and then you can resubmit the report. We can also resubmit them on your behalf if it was something that was missing from our system. Final thing is these monthly summaries is a really critical part of the system. So for CRPFs and anybody doing the transportation reimbursement, you'll be submitting activity reports on a daily or weekly basis. And then at the end of the month, we'll have an automated process that will basically summarize all of the data that you've submitted to us in the last month. Then you can use that, validate it against your own systems, make sure that everything looks correct, and then use that information to submit your invoice. So not everybody needs to submit activity reports. If you're doing the contamination reduction programming or education and outreach and things like that, then or some of the service expansion, then there's not necessarily any activity reports that you would need for those reimbursements. Those ones you would just submit an invoice along with all the required documentation. And within this portion of the portal, you'll be able to submit the invoice, review the status, and you can obviously enter and update any banking information. Obviously, extra security here because this is such a critical part. We do not want to be sending money to the wrong organization or to the wrong bank account, and so there will be extra security for that portion of the portal. Next slide. So this is when you log in to the portal. Once you get access, if you have signed one of these addenda that requires activity reports, then this tab will be activated for you, and you can click on it and use it to select the type of activity report that you're going to submit. Put any comments or questions or any comments in there. You'll see below that you can download the template at any time. There will be a report guide for you. So if you have questions about what you should be putting in a certain field, that information will be available to you. So these reports will be in a template format that our system is expecting. And so you would enter your information there. We're working with each of the CRPFs to make this process and some of the larger transfer stations to make this process as easy as possible. So we're actually working to set up mapping files between sort of a standard output from your scale system. We can map it into our system, and we know sort of how that we'd like to see that information. Work with you to make sure that what we're doing is correct, and then from there on out, it should make it much easier for you to take an extract from your system, paste it into this template, and then upload it to the system. So here you just basically would upload it and hit submit, and then it'll go into our validation engine. So each of these activity reports is basically scale ticket information. So it's if it's a CRPF, it'll be inbound and outbound transactions on the scales. Obviously, sort of looking at in what type of materials it is and where it came from, where it's going, what the type of truck, the truck number, all of those kinds of things. And happy to make sure that everyone who needs it has the templates available so you can start to see and understand what level of information. One of the critical things, and I think I'll talk about this more in a later slide, that we need to do is to be able to tie each of those shipments, each of those material drop-offs or movements with at least for the local hauler drop-offs at transfer stations at MRFs. We would like to link every one of those with a route information. And so the route information we're looking to get from the haulers and then have that added to the scale tickets if it's not already an option at your facility. So we'd want each of the haulers when they're dropping off their material to be able to indicate what route it is that they collected on, and then we'll gather information from the haulers that'll give us that route and what communities it's a part of that, or what communities are serviced there. Because it's important for us, for DEQ, to be able to track all of this, sort of the tonnage and the funding and everything back to the communities that it originated in. So a little bit more to come on there, but next one. So I talked about this, but this is you can kind of see an example of an activity report. And so there's a lot of it's just, as you can see, kind of originating facilities, destination facilities, what type of material. And this is one is specifically for the transportation reimbursement. So for those, we will be looking for an estimated cost prior to the movement, and then also after an actual cost of what it was for it. So each template's available, and they'll all include kind of these detailed directions, and also some reference data in there so that you can easily find the places that you're looking for. Next slide. So how often should you be doing activity reports? So we kind of detailed out the different activity reports that are out there, along with some of the notes. So for the CRPFs, we'd have an inbound and outbound report. We're looking for daily data, and that's just because it's a lot of data, and data that we need to make sure is coming in correctly and that we can review and approve. But we are open. So if daily does not fit in, we know that there's with scale tickets. It doesn't have to be at the end of that day. It could be, by the end of the following day or the day after that, depending on sort of your process for, adjusting tickets and validating and making sure all the data is in there and all of that. And if we need to, we can work with you to reduce the frequency to weekly or a couple times a week or something like that. Either way, all of the data is going to need to be in by the end of the month, by the third business day of the next month. And that data will then be used because we want to be doing sort of a full closeout process with each of the facilities to understand all of the inbound and outbound material. You'll see that second line is an inventory report. So on a monthly basis, you'd be submitting an inventory report, which is a list of all of the bales that you've got in inventory still, an estimate of what's on the floor, and all of that, so that we can start to understand sort of the full flow of material and understand the capture rates and things like that within each of the facilities. Also, on a monthly basis, the CRPFs will need to support in getting the information. We have all the shipments need to be tracked to a responsible end market. I know that there's still some, sort of working with DEQ on making sure that this is, something that we can help provide support on for each of the CRPFs. So, and I think having the data submitted to us, we'll actually be able to, validate that all of the shipments that you have made it to a responsible end market, and we can provide reports back to you that should make reporting to DEQ a little bit easier. So, but that is something on a monthly basis we'll want to get, sort of the broker end market reports, which would be where the material is ending up after it leaves your facilities. For non-CRPFs, there's a few different ones. All of these are going to be less frequent, a little bit less frequently than the CRPFs. Transfer stations, reload facilities, we'd be looking for weekly submissions of information, glass collection, sort of a delivery report of where the glass was collected from and where it got delivered to. Also can be done on a weekly basis. All of these can obviously be done more frequently if that works better in your system, but this is what we would be requesting at a minimum. We're going to go through the transportation reimbursement in a little bit more detail here in an upcoming slide, but basically for any movements that you're requesting reimbursement for, You'll need to be able to request have an approval for that ahead of time. So what we've set the system up to do is you can sort of bulk submit these. So if you know that in general you're going to be, shipping, 10 to 20 loads or 10 to 12 loads, then, you can request for those for that full month. So each of these transportation approvals will last 30 days. So you can, start at the beginning of the month. You can request transportation authorization, and then once you've completed those shipments, then on a monthly basis you would be submitting those. Again, you can also submit those more frequently, if that makes more sense to do if you're moving a lot of material around that requires the transportation reimbursement. Next slide. I did see, um, there was a question in the chat. This is just to be clear, this is all for service providers. So this is the folks who nothing to do with producer requirements. So this would only be for recycling facilities and for local governments and haulers who we are going to be paying. So I think that question, you're probably not I don't think that this is not the forum for that question. All right, so transportation reimbursements. So as I said, these for each movement of material that you're going to be requesting information or requesting reimbursement on, you're going to need to submit an activity report and get a transportation authorization number in back. The and so for so basically for if you should you probably will know sort of like about how many shipments that you'd be requesting transportation reimbursement for the upcoming month. And so each one of these you can fill out. You'll have one row will be each one of your shipments, but you can bulk upload those. So you can fill out 10 rows if you know you're going to be doing 10 shipments between each origin destination facility, material preparation type, and truck type, along with the estimated cost and estimated tons of that material. This will allow the system to automatically validate these against what you've submitted as part of your PFA and funding agreements. So as part of those agreements, as you're working on those, we are going to be needing to get a full list of all of the different sort of source destination materials that you will be requesting transportation reimbursement for. That will really help everybody. If there's something new, if there's a new lane or a facility closes down or a new facility opens up, obviously we can easily add new segments to the system. But I think this is a critical one for the July 1st start date, because you will need to make sure that you are getting authorization before any of the shipments that you will be requesting reimbursement for. So can't stress enough getting that information, getting the PFA signed, getting the funding agreement signed, the addenda, and getting data to us all in advance of July 1st will really make that process much smoother. We won't be reimbursing for any transportation segments that did not get approval prior to the shipment. So then after that, oops, sorry, go back one. Taking a short breath. But the service provider, so each of you will submit an activity report at the end of the month. So it'd be a separate one. You'll have your request at the beginning of the month, generally at the end of the month, or after you've completed the shipments, then you'll upload the information. So this will include all of this, each scale ticket that you have, the actual price, tons, and then obviously this transportation authorization number. at the end of the month. So we'll want all of those, all the data from all of the shipments into the system before the third business day of the following month. And that's the day that we will create a monthly summary for you, and you can then use that to validate against your systems. And then the invoice that you submit should match the data that's on the monthly summary. So this is again sort of a critical part of the process where this is the data for tracking material movements is also then going to be used for the submission of your invoices. Next slide. So each of these monthly reports will be created by the system on the third business day of the month. We'll be reviewing them manually, and then once we've reviewed them to make sure they make sense, they match the data that we understand, the system's doing it correctly, then those will appear in the portal on around the fourth business day, the third or fourth business day. Then it's a chance for you to review that monthly report, ensure the data is there, make sure there wasn't a report that was rejected that you didn't realize and is missing from the monthly report. Any of that kind of stuff we'll want to know within the next couple of days after that so that we can work with you to update the system, get the data in there that's needed. If there was a day that was missing, any of all of that kind of stuff. So once that has been approved, then you would use that data to create your monthly invoice to submit into the system. Next slide. So for submitting invoices, you can see here, this is again sort of require an extra bit of security to get to this portion of the portal. So here you can as the billing contact, you'd be able to log in and get into this portion and the invoices and payments. You're going to make sure that you'll need to have an approved PO set up prior to submitting the invoice. And so that's something that, is once you've got all of your information submitted, then internally we'll create a PO and share that with you through the portal here. Next slide. So then you can submit invoices, directly through the portal. So we want you to, you navigate to this screen where you can create a new invoice. Just put in the basic information from your invoice, and this will link it to the PO that's already in the system, and then allow you to upload the invoice from your system to it. So you can create the invoice, upload enter the information about it, and then upload the information or upload your invoice. So we have that's in the system for any of the for many of the different ones, and this is all included in the addenda. Each invoice will need to have supporting documentation. So this may be, receipts or, proposals or proof of delivery or any of the other things that would prove that this is an expense that, is a valid one for reimbursement and, has been completed. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but the baseline data that we'll be looking for from each of the service providers, at least those who are submitting activity reports. So we'll be reaching out to folks either who have signed their PFA or we've also been working with many of the CRPFs already to get data. We're looking for basically 1 to 3 to 6 months of historical transactional data. And then we can kind of help to map that into our system, make sure that, we have record of all the places that you do ship material to or that you receive material from. And so that, again, this will really ease the process on July 1st, once you start submitting data that in order to make sure that the data will get processed correctly and move in through the system. So we're working with each of the different, sort of CRPFs and large transfer stations to reload facilities to get transactional data so that we can map it into our system. It should make it much easier for you to continue to do this on an ongoing basis. Um, each of these, this is all going to be sort of inbound, outbound, scale ticket information. Again, as I mentioned, we are going to need to have this route field for all local inbound loads. We are trying to track material from the place where it first gets dropped off, again, all the way through to the end market. So this route information will really be useful for us so that we can then tie any loads of material to the specific communities that they came from. I think will really help us sort of achieve the targets, the high levels of recycling that we want to achieve. And so we can use this information both for reporting to DEQ, but then also to support local governments in education and outreach and improving the recovery rates of these materials. So again, if you need to, feel free to reach out to us. You can see Dan Lance, who's my colleague, is leading a lot of this. So you may get an email from him specifically around data requests, or you can send an email to us either here or at that service provider support email as well. But we will be looking to try to get this data set up in our system over the next, 3 weeks, so that we can, so that on July 1st or soon after, we'll be able to, once you get your information in there, we can process all of the data that you'll be reporting to us. Transportation reimbursement, again, very similar. We're going to want to make sure that we know exactly where the source and destination materials, estimated monthly shipments, what types of trucks you're using, whether you're baling, whether it's all just loose, all of that kind of information so that we can, again, enter that so it's easy for us to approve any authorizations for movement of material for the transportation reimbursement. Next slide. All right. So biggest thing still obviously is I think we've gotten maybe a third of the PFAs, the primary funding agreements that we're expecting. So continue working, with your legal team or getting approval for those. Along with all of any associated addenda to make sure that all those are signed and the information is submitted. And the other big thing I think is, we make sure that you sort of whitelist the at circularaction.org because those are those should be the emails, the automated emails that may come from our system. And so your IT department may need to whitelist those in order to make sure that all of those can come through. All right, I'll take a breath. I think we'll probably have if we have questions in the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Let me stop sharing my screen. We will get over to some questions. So just as a reminder to folks, if you do have a question, if you could put that in the Q&A panel, it's just a little easier for us to track those instead of in the chat. So our first question comes from Joe. If we have a billing contact that submits invoices or uploads activity for multiple entities, will that person have the ability to move between entities without signing in and out for each entity? These screens do
Yeah, and that's
to support that. So
yeah, so I think that the way that we'd like to work with service providers that have multiple entities is that we can work to set those up so they don't have to match exactly how your PFAs are being signed. We'll be able to kind of customize how we want to set it up. So if you've got, a group that is, it's going to be submitting invoices for a number of different entities, we should be able to set them up with a single account. If they need to be, separate accounts, then unfortunately at this time, we don't have the ability to kind of select those within the same thing. You would have to have multiple logins for those types, but we're hoping that we can work through a lot of this by the account setup and making sure. So if you are doing multiple entities, please reach out to us as after you've got your PFAs signed, and we'd be, happy to kind of work with you to set to set that up in a way that makes the most sense. Obviously, we just need to kind of understand who's going to be submitting in the activity reports, and then who will be submitting the invoices and for which different facilities or entities that those will do. And I think we'll be able to work something up that will make it easy for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. And we will drop the support email address that folks can reach out to you in the chat to make that a little easier for you. All right. The next question is, what is currently being considered a responsible end market according to CAA, and where can I find more information on that? Is that something that we have, or should we follow up there?
So we can follow up with that. I think it's still something that's being, worked out with DEQ. A lot of it is around. So we've gotten so there's kind of a process for a responsible end market becoming or for an end market to become a responsible end market. And so the first step for them is to sign a self-attestation form. We've gotten quite a few of these back already, but certainly not from all of the folks that we know are sending that CRPFs or others are sending material to. So we're working with DEQ to make sure that we have sort of the ability to either kind of to convey who is a responsible end market and who is not. And I believe DEQ is working on some. I always forget a variance process, a concurrence process for the first 6 months to allow material to continue to be sent, even if the end market has not signed their self-attestation form or committed to becoming a responsible end market.
Excellent.
So, not the clearest answer. I wish it could be more clear right now, but I think that it's probably going to be a bit of a process over the next few months to work with DEQ on it.
Excellent. The next question is, how long will it take to receive approval for the transportation reimbursement, and how much in advance can we request approval?
So it should only take a day or so to get the approval for the transportation reimbursement. If there's and we'll receive them. The system will validate them for us, and we'll be able to go in, review, and approve them as well. You can and so I would say just a day would be if it needs to happen quickly. But yeah, within a couple days, for sure, we should be able to get to any of those. You can request approval for anything for 30 days. So you can kind of do that at the beginning of the month, give all of your likely shipments for that month. If you think you're going to do, 9 shipments that month, you can request for 10. And then at the end of the month, that 10th one would just expire, and then you would just request more for the next month. So each one is valid for 30 days from the time was submitted.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. This next question is about brokers and for the broker and end market report. What specific fields or information do you want to see on that report?
So we can certainly share the template with you for that. In essence, it'll be sort of where each of the material movements. So for the broker, it's probably going to be if you're documenting from your CRPF report that the material is going from your CRPF to a broker. Then on the broker report, you would then say that from the broker, it's going to this specific end market. And so if it needs to go through a couple different hands before it goes there, then we would just want to have you track those material movements. But if it stays in the same, if basically the broker is the one who's making sure it gets to the end market, then we're just going to want to know the broker that it was, and then the end market that it's ending up at. We'll be tracking like container numbers or other, PO or BOL numbers, things like that, so we can make sure we have the chain of custody to get to the end market. But happy to share that with you. If you want to reach out to us, we can give you that template report.
Thank you. And speaking of reaching out, we just dropped the email address in the chat. So you can reach out to that serviceproviders.support@circularaction.org if you have additional questions or other things come up after this. All right, the next question. We provide glass service to multiple jurisdictions. Can I submit one invoice for reimbursement, or will I have to do a separate one for each jurisdiction?
So you would be able to submit each of the activity reports would have all of the detailed information for each of those jurisdictions. So if you picked up glass from one or two jurisdictions on Monday and then from a different one on Wednesday, or however you're running your operation, all of that would go into the activity report. And so the invoice that you submit is fine just to be for one, you could just do one invoice for all of that activity, and we would be able to allocate that that money for our reporting to each of the different jurisdictions based on the tonnage that we would get from there. So we would need the data just in the activity reports, but not necessarily in the invoice.
Thank you. And what I am seeing is the last question, but I always say that and then others pop in. So again, if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A. We have a few more minutes left. The question, and this might be connected to what you just answered, but will the system allow for the same route to be reported for multiple days? So for example, Route 1 on Monday will have a different breakdown than Route 1 on Tuesday. Do we have to renumber all of our routes?
It's kind of funny. This was an internal debate that we had amongst different folks, and it was concluded that I had always thought that everyone numbered them differently for each route would have its own unique number, but we know that's not the case. So we set up the system to be able to accept the route plus day combination. So it would just be unique to your service provider, to the hauler, but route and day would be the unique combination.
Awesome. I love hearing that we actually reflect on the ground experiences and how folks set up their systems. So hopefully that works well for the service providers out there that are using the portal. I am not seeing any other questions in the Q&A right now. So just as a reminder, I dropped several links into the chat. One of them, if you will be attending the Association of Oregon Recycler Conference at the end of the month, we have a couple ways that you can learn more about the service provider portal. One of which is we will be hosting a session. Aaron, our amazing portal builder and leader, will be coming out to Oregon and doing a session on Wednesday, the 25th at 9:30, giving a live demo of the service provider portal. So that's a great session to attend if you can. The other option is to register for one-on-one assistance. We have some time set aside that you can sign up for. Dropped the link there in the chat, and it also came out in the Oregon newsletter earlier this month. So if you're not getting that, visit the circularactionalliance.org website. You can sign up for the newsletter there. Just check the Oregon box. But those will be times that you can have one-on-one assistance. So if you need help getting in or have questions about how to submit reports, that is a great time to do it if you will be at AOR. Otherwise, again, that serviceproviders.support@circularaction.org email address is where you can send questions. This webinar, along with the first one, will be on the webinar archive on circularactionalliance.org within the next couple of days. So you can always go back and check that out. And we will continue to put materials so that we help you log in and use the portal as things move forward. Again, we're looking to get that set up and launched in just 6 days, so the 17th of June. So as a reminder, if you haven't signed your PFA yet, that primary funding agreement, that is the key to unlock your access to the service provider portal. So make sure to get that downloaded and submitted as soon as possible. You can find all the information on circularactionalliance.org/Oregon. There's a whole section for the PFA. Not seeing any other questions, so a big thank you, Aaron. A big thank you to everyone who's joined us today. A big thanks to the rest of the service provider portal team for building this out and helping get everything ready. We'll see you either in AOR or just a few weeks with the launch of the RMA. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.